On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected. Marlon Brando, one of the most influential actors of the 20th century, died of respiratory failure on July 1, 2004, at the age of 80. His death was the result of a long struggle with pulmonary fibrosis and congestive heart failure, conditions exacerbated by diabetes and past health complications. He passed away in Los Angeles, largely withdrawn from public life in his final years, in sharp contrast to the commanding presence he once embodied on screen. Brando's death marked the end of an era in Hollywood. As the face of method acting, he had revolutionized American cinema with raw, emotionally charged performances in classics like A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, and The Godfather. His portrayals broke with the theatrical traditions of earlier film stars, instead capturing the inner turmoil and contradictions of the human condition. The manner of his death, natural and quiet, stood in stark contrast to the stormy intensity of his career and personal life, which was marked by political activism, personal tragedy, and a notoriously volatile temperament. The immediate reaction to Brando's passing was a mixture of reverence and reflection. While many acknowledged the controversies and eccentricities that shadowed his later years, tributes overwhelmingly celebrated his profound impact on film and popular culture. His performances had not only shifted the trajectory of acting, but also opened the door for future generations of actors to pursue truth and vulnerability on screen. Brando's death also highlighted the shifting values of Hollywood. In an era increasingly dominated by commercial franchises and celebrity branding, Brando represented a bygone age when actors risked their careers for artistry, authenticity, and political conviction. His outspoken support for civil rights and Native American causes, most famously when he refused his 1973 Oscar in protest, underscored his belief that fame should serve a moral purpose. In death, Brando has been immortalized through countless retrospectives, documentaries, and critical essays. His face remains etched into cinematic history, a symbol of rebellion, depth, and transformation. Statues, biographies, and university lectures continue to dissect and honor his legacy. His story reflects humanity's enduring desire to remember not just greatness, but complexity, to preserve figures who dared to challenge systems and express the unspoken. Ultimately, Brando's death reminds us that while mortality claims even the giants, their influence can echo louder than their final breath. We commemorate such figures not just to mourn, but to inspire, to warn, and to dream. Michael Landon, beloved American actor, director, and screenwriter, died of pancreatic cancer on July 1, 1991, at the age of 54. His passing was not only sudden, it came just 3 months after his public diagnosis, but also profoundly symbolic, as Landon had become a fixture in American homes through roles that embodied family values, perseverance, and quiet, moral strength. From Bonanza to Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven, Landon's television presence championed themes of compassion, community, and spiritual hope during an era increasingly defined by social upheaval and skepticism. His death, though from natural causes, carried an emotional weight that reflected the deeper anxieties of the early 1990s, a time when the simplicity and wholesomeness of Landon's storytelling style felt like a relic from a disappearing America. The nation was facing the first Gulf War, rising political polarization, and cultural shifts. In that context, Landon's death represented the fading of an era that prized earnestness and idealism in entertainment. His illness and quick decline also mirrored society's growing awareness of aggressive cancers and the emotional toll they take, not just on patients, but on families and public communities. The response to Landon's death was immediate and heartfelt. Viewers and celebrities alike mourned a man who had long been more than just an actor. He was a symbol of gentle resilience. Unlike other stars embroiled in scandal or controversy, Landon cultivated a reputation for being deeply involved in the creative process and personally invested in the emotional integrity of his work. His death amplified the values he portrayed, reinforcing the cultural memory of him as a rare figure of goodness in the industry. Since his passing, Landon has been memorialized through posthumous tributes, reruns of his shows, and heartfelt accounts by cast members and fans alike. His legacy endures in the nostalgic appreciation of programming that centers family, faith, and redemption. His life and death remind us of how figures in media can embody ideals we strive to hold on to, even when those ideals feel out of reach. Ultimately, Michael Landon's passing invites reflection on how we face loss, not only in individuals, but in the values they represent. Through storytelling, commemoration, and memory, we keep alive those qualities we most fear to lose. Luther Vandross, the iconic American singer, songwriter, and record producer, passed away on July 1, 2005, at the age of 54 due to natural causes stemming from a stroke he suffered 2 years earlier. His death, though not sudden, was deeply felt across the music world and among his fans, as Vandross had spent decades as the voice of romantic ballads and soulful introspection. His passing marked the end of an era in R&B and adult contemporary music, genres that in Vandross's hands had been elevated to emotional and artistic excellence. Vandross's stroke in 2003 had left him largely out of the public eye during the final years of his life. The health complications that followed, partly linked to his lifelong struggles with weight, diabetes, and hypertension, reflected broader health challenges faced by many in the African American community. His vulnerability in these final years stood in stark contrast to the powerful, velvet-smooth voice that had once filled concert halls and radio waves, a voice synonymous with both vocal mastery and emotional depth. His death highlighted a cultural shift. As R&B transitioned into more contemporary beat-driven styles in the early 2000s, Vandross represented a soulful, intimate sound that was becoming less prevalent. His passing not only left a gap in music, but also signaled the closing of a chapter when male vocalists led with sensitivity, vulnerability, and deep romanticism. It reminded the world of the importance of melody, lyrics, and feeling in a changing industry. The immediate aftermath of Vandross's death brought tributes from fellow musicians, media outlets, and millions of fans. He had won 8 Grammy Awards, including Song of the Year for Dance with My Father, a track that gained even more poignant significance after his passing. Posthumous compilations and documentaries have kept his memory alive, ensuring that new generations continue to discover the depth of his artistry. Luther Vandross's legacy is preserved through the timelessness of his music. His influence is felt not only in the works of artists who followed him, but also in how love, heartbreak, and longing are expressed in popular song. His story reflects humanity's desire to hold on to beauty and emotion through art, even as time takes the artist away. In mourning Vandross, we celebrate not only his voice, but what it gave us, a mirror into the soul, and a reminder that through music, memory becomes immortal. Karl Malden, one of Hollywood's most respected character actors, died of natural causes on July 1, 2009, at the age of 97. His long life and gentle passing stood in contrast to many of the more tragic or sudden deaths that often mark the end of an entertainer's journey. Malden's death marked not only the loss of a gifted performer, but also a symbolic closing of a chapter in Hollywood history, one that valued substance over flash and craftsmanship over celebrity. Born to a Serbian father and Czech mother, Malden's Midwestern upbringing and everyman appearance shaped his identity as an actor. He built a reputation portraying principled, emotionally grounded characters, from Father Barry in On the Waterfront to Detective Lieutenant Mike Stone in the 1970s TV series The Streets of San Francisco. In an era dominated by movie stars who epitomized glamour or rebellion, Malden carved out a legacy by reflecting the quiet dignity of the working class. His career coincided with a Hollywood in flux, moving from the moral clarity of post-war films to the ambiguity of 1970s realism, and Malden adapted without ever losing his core values on screen. His passing didn't send cultural shockwaves like some contemporaries, but it did provoke reflection on the industry's changing face. Malden was from a generation of actors who came through theater, valued the ensemble, and treated fame with humility. His death was a reminder of the disappearing ethos of professionalism and artistic integrity in a celebrity-obsessed era. In many ways, his passing was more than personal. It was generational. The tributes that followed emphasized his commitment to craft and mentorship. As president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences from 1989 to 1992, Malden worked to uphold industry standards and honor cinematic legacy. He wasn't a tabloid figure or a media spectacle. He was instead a symbol of stability, depth, and enduring artistic values. Karl Malden's legacy endures not just in his award-winning performances, but in what he represented: authenticity. We remember him through the roles that gave heart and conscience to American cinema, through the moral weight he lent his characters, and through the way he carried himself. In doing so, we reaffirm our deep need to celebrate not only those who shine the brightest, but those who stand the strongest. Margot Hemingway's death on July 1, 1996, was ruled a suicide by drug overdose, a tragic end that echoed the haunted legacy of her famous family. At just 42 years old, the model and actress, once hailed as a symbol of glamour and beauty in the 1970s, succumbed to personal demons shaped by fame, addiction, and mental illness. Her passing marked yet another link in a chain of tragedy for the Hemingway family, whose history of suicide spanned generations, including her grandfather, the literary giant Ernest Hemingway. Margot rose to prominence in the fashion world, becoming the first model to sign a $1 million contract. She appeared on the covers of major magazines and starred in several films, but as the 1980s unfolded, her star dimmed. Her struggles with alcoholism, depression, and the weight of public scrutiny paralleled the shifting values of the era, a time when the darker side of celebrity life was beginning to receive more attention. Unlike earlier decades that often masked such issues in silence, Margot's death occurred during a period when society was slowly starting to confront mental health and substance abuse as systemic problems, not moral failures. The immediate response to her death was a mixture of sorrow and resignation. Her fall from grace had been well publicized, and her tragic end seemed, to many, heartbreakingly inevitable. But it also sparked renewed discussion about the pressures faced by women in the public eye, particularly those whose careers are built around appearance and image. The 1990s media landscape, obsessed with tabloid drama, often failed to capture the full humanity of figures like Margot, reducing them to cautionary tales rather than subjects of compassion. In the broader context of the Hemingway family saga, Margot's death further cemented the mythic, almost gothic aura surrounding their name. Her life and death have since been explored in books and documentaries that examine the psychological toll of fame, familial legacy, and artistic burden. Through these portrayals, she is remembered not just for her beauty, but for the vulnerability behind it. Margot Hemingway's passing challenges us to rethink how we view legacy and loss. Her story reflects a universal struggle for identity amid expectation, and how memory, when preserved with empathy, can transform tragedy into understanding. In honoring her, we confront the fragility of human life and the deep need for compassion in how we remember the fallen. Leslie Brooks, a luminous presence in Hollywood's golden era, passed away from natural causes on July 1, 2011, at the age of 88. Best known for her roles in 1940s film noir and B-movies, she represented an era where Hollywood glamour intertwined with wartime optimism and post-war complexity. Her death marked the quiet close of a chapter in film history, one that celebrated women on screen as both symbols of allure and agents of intrigue. Brooks's death, though peaceful and largely out of the public eye, serves as a reflection of the changing nature of fame. In contrast to the highly publicized and sometimes sensational deaths of modern celebrities, hers was dignified and understated, perhaps befitting a star of her generation. In the mid-20th century, actors often lived in the shadows of the characters they portrayed. Public personas were carefully managed by studios, and many stars, like Brooks, stepped away from the spotlight without scandal or spectacle. Her passing did not send shockwaves through the entertainment industry, nor did it dramatically alter the trajectory of film history. However, it prompted nostalgic remembrances among classic cinema fans and film historians who recognized her contribution to a genre that shaped the American cinematic identity. Movies like Blonde Ice, 1948, where she played a femme fatale with icy confidence, helped define the contours of noir storytelling and the evolving roles of women in cinema during and after World War II. Leslie Brooks's death highlights how the legacies of mid-century stars are often preserved not through tabloid attention or modern media cycles, but through film preservation, retrospectives, and scholarly appreciation. Her image remains immortal in celluloid, each frame capturing the elegance and mystique that defined the 1940s silver screen. Reflecting on Brooks's life and quiet departure reminds us of how the memory of cultural figures can evolve with time. While not every star alters the course of history, each contributes to the rich mosaic of human creativity. Through restored films, classic movie channels, and online archives, actresses like Leslie Brooks continue to enchant new generations. Her death, though without fanfare, reaffirms the enduring truth that art, once created, can grant immortality beyond the limits of mortal life. Eileen Woods, the beloved voice behind Disney's original Cinderella, passed away from natural causes related to Alzheimer's disease on July 1, 2010, at the age of 81. Her death marked the end of a life that had quietly but profoundly influenced generations through the magic of storytelling and music. Though she did not appear frequently in the public spotlight, her voice, gentle, warm, and filled with hope, became an enduring emblem of childhood wonder and classic animation. Woods was only 18 when she recorded the demo tracks for Cinderella in 1948, never imagining that Walt Disney himself would select her for the iconic role. At a time when the studio was financially strained and the post-war world was still adjusting to a new era of modernity, Cinderella, 1950, became a cultural reset, a triumphant return for Disney and a symbol of optimism. Woods's performance helped define the tone and emotional arc of the film, conveying resilience and grace that resonated with a society seeking stability and dreams after global turmoil. Her death reflected the passing of a quieter era in entertainment, one where voices, rather than personas, captured the hearts of audiences. Unlike today's stars with highly visible lives and digital footprints, Woods led a relatively private existence. Her legacy was not one of tabloid headlines or constant reinvention, but rather of enduring consistency. Her voice preserved forever in animation, replayed by millions each year. The immediate response to her death was marked by affectionate tributes from Disney fans and the animation community. While her passing did not dramatically shift the course of pop culture, it reignited appreciation for the understated contributions of voice actors, especially those who helped build the foundation of what would become a global entertainment empire. Eileen Woods' legacy endures not through controversy or spectacle, but through song, particularly "A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes," a lullaby of hope still passed from parents to children. Her death serves as a poignant reminder of how some of the most powerful cultural influences are not always the loudest, but the most sincere. In remembering Woods, we confront the way art transcends time. Through film, music, and memory, she remains forever young, her voice echoing across decades as a gentle promise that magic can be found, even in the darkest of times. Harriet Quimby, a trailblazing figure in early aviation, met a tragic and untimely death on July 1, 1912, in what was then considered both a shocking accident and a sobering reminder of the dangers of early flight. At the age of 37, Quimby had already made history as the first American woman to earn a pilot's license in 1911, and the first woman to fly solo across the English Channel in 1912. Her death came just months after that historic feat, during an aviation meet in Squantum, Massachusetts. While piloting a new two-seat Blériot monoplane with a passenger aboard, Quimby encountered sudden turbulence. At approximately 1,000 feet above the Boston harbor, the aircraft pitched forward, and both she and her passenger were ejected from the open cockpit, plummeting to their deaths. The plane itself glided on and landed relatively intact, making the tragedy all the more haunting. The absence of seat belts, a common omission in aircraft of that era, played a fatal role, highlighting the rudimentary state of aviation safety at the time. Quimby's death stunned the public. She had become a symbol of progress and female empowerment in the early 20th century, challenging societal norms and entering an almost exclusively male-dominated field. Her passing occurred at the intersection of fascination with new technology and anxiety about its limits. As aviation was still in its infancy, her death served as both a cautionary tale and a rallying cry for safer innovation. Ironically, Quimby's death was somewhat overshadowed in the press by other events of the day, including the sinking of a boat during the same event that killed more spectators. Yet, over time, her legacy grew. She came to symbolize not just female courage, but the daring spirit of a generation willing to risk everything to push human boundaries. Today, Harriet Quimby is immortalized in aviation halls of fame, stamps, biographies, and even in the lavender satin flying suit she famously designed herself, a visual emblem of individuality and defiance. Her death reflects a recurring truth in history, that pioneers often pay the highest price. And yet, their stories endure, not simply for how they died, but for how they lived with purpose and vision. Through remembrance, we affirm that progress is shaped not only by invention, but by the bravery of those willing to lead the way. Juan Peron, the three-time president of Argentina and one of Latin America's most polarizing political figures, died of natural causes on July 1, 1974, at the age of 78. Perón succumbed to a heart attack while in office during his third presidential term, marking the end of an era that had reshaped Argentina's political identity. His death did not come as a surprise. His health had been visibly deteriorating for months, but it sent shockwaves through a nation deeply divided over his legacy. Perón's passing occurred in a period marked by political instability and economic crisis. Having returned from exile in 1973, he attempted to restore order to a country torn by leftist guerrilla movements and right-wing paramilitary violence. His death left the nation in the hands of his third wife and vice president, Isabel Perón, whose ascent to power marked the first time a woman led a modern republic. However, Isabel lacked her husband's charisma and political control, and her presidency quickly descended into chaos, culminating in a military coup in 1976. Thus, Perón's death did not merely end a life, it triggered a rapid unraveling of the democratic order he had tried to restore. Perón's legacy was, and remains, fiercely debated. To his supporters, he was a champion of the working class who introduced labor protections, social welfare programs, and a new political movement, Peronism, that would dominate Argentine politics for decades. To his critics, he was an authoritarian who centralized power and suppressed dissent. His death amplified both narratives. He became a mythic figure to the Peronist faithful and a cautionary symbol of populism gone awry to others. What Perón's death reveals about humanity's relationship with mortality and power is that the death of a political leader often becomes a symbolic moment, a mirror reflecting a nation's hopes, anxieties, and divisions. Perón, in death, became larger than life. His image was immortalized not just in statues and government rhetoric, but in the enduring influence of Peronism itself, which continues to shape Argentina's political discourse. In literature, cinema, and even musicals like Evita, which focuses largely on his second wife, Eva Perón, Juan Perón's figure is resurrected, debated, and reinterpreted. His death, while natural, left a power vacuum and a legacy that transcended the man, reinforcing how leaders can continue to influence history long after they are gone. Mikail Bakunan, one of the most influential anarchist thinkers of the 19th century, died of natural causes on July 1, 1876, in Bern, Switzerland, at the age of 62. Suffering from chronic illness and worn down by decades of political struggle, imprisonment, and exile, Bakunan's final years were marked by physical decline but intellectual clarity. His death, quiet and largely unceremonious, stood in stark contrast to the revolutionary fervor that had defined his life. Bakunan's passing did not make global headlines at the time. Yet his death marked the fading of one of the most passionate voices of 19th century radicalism. He had been a fiery opponent of both state authority and Marxist centralism, advocating for a stateless society rooted in voluntary cooperation and direct action. His ideological conflicts, particularly his famous feud with Karl Marx during the First International, reflected deeper tensions in the leftist movements of the era, between authoritarian socialism and libertarian anarchism. In death, Bakunan's legend only grew. Though he never saw a full-scale anarchist society realized, his writings inspired generations of activists, from the Spanish anarchists of the 1930s to modern anti-globalization and anti-authoritarian movements. His belief in the revolutionary power of the masses, distrust of state power, and call for liberation from all hierarchies resonated in times of social upheaval and political repression. Thus, his death did not end his influence. It catalyzed his mythos. Bakunan's quiet departure from life highlights a recurring paradox in human history, that the most disruptive thinkers often die in obscurity, only to be resurrected by later generations seeking answers to the same systemic injustices. His death reminds us that the struggle for freedom and equity is often a long game, one waged across centuries by voices that refuse to be silenced, even in death. Bakunan is immortalized not through monuments or state-sponsored tributes, fittingly for an anarchist, but through books, grassroots movements, and underground political culture. His ideas live on in zines, student protests, digital manifestos, and autonomous collectives worldwide. Ultimately, Bakunan's death reflects how mortality intersects with ideological legacy. Power can be institutionalized, but memory, especially the memory of resistance, lives in ideas. And Bakunan's ideas, though born in the 1800s, continue to challenge the structures of control that define modern society.